Hi, everyone. So before I get to the whole point, let me just give me a minute for a preamble to set this all up. Because in my book series, it's on this side, The Crown and the Caged God, there's book one, part one, there's book one, part two. There are a lot of yet unanswered questions in it. I mean, you can see the creature on the cover of that one, the creature from Thorn. What is it? What and like why is it seemingly tormenting, particular, groups of people? Who are the nameless people? What is their relationship, with a creature? Bonston, where does wealth come from? What's his role in all of this? Oh, I mean, even like little things. Auroric's weird sword, like what is it, and like where did he get it? And then like central things to the plot. How did the protagonist and Sin meet? What happened to Sin? Um, and or even just like what is the protagonist's name? I mean, after 800 pages, we still don't have a name for the protagonist that you can clearly kind of figure out. And so I'm asked, like, am I gonna, by the end of the book, am I going to answer every single one of these questions? And like, yes-ish, I'm going to. I mean, I'm not going to explicitly answer plainly, clearly every single one. And that's what brings us to today's topic, the Zeigarnik effect in fiction. I mean, just pick your genre. It's mysteries, it's thrillers, it's, I don't know, romance. For me, it's fantasy, like non-romance fantasy. I mean, do you need to just tie up every single loose plot thread by the end? So when you get to the last page, there's just no riddle remaining, nothing left to unravel. Every single question introduced has been sufficiently answered. So when you close that cover, and file it away on the shelf behind you, or at least behind me, there's no reason to ever think about that book again. I don't think that's the most effective. I don't think it's a good approach to writing fiction. I think that does more to subtract from the from that like emotional hum of the book that should linger for a long time after the book is just nothing but another spine on the shelf. So when I was growing up, there was this TV show called Unsolved Mysteries. And I mean, we're talking late 80s. I'm a single digit age, when it's new. And I'm watching it on like my 13-inch, like measured diagonally, my 13-inch television. And it was hosted by this guy in a trench coat who, to me, he looked like John Kreese from The Karate Kid, which I loved back then. I mean, I was such a fan of and maybe that's part of the appeal of a true crime docu-series. That genre is so popular today, but back then it was like it wasn't a thing. It was just kind of it was that show. And at the end of every single episode, it was unsolved, right? They didn't have an answer. I mean, if it were called Solved Mysteries, I don't think it would have gone for 17 seasons. I looked it up. That's a really long time. It's the absence of an answer, that stays with us the longest. And I don't know if that maps onto novels perfectly. But this idea of the sort of the search for a meaning that lingers and lingers, the name for that phenomenon is the Zeigarnik effect. And it was coined about a century ago by Bluma Zeigarnik. She was this Soviet psychologist. And I mean, I've been talking about it, kind of giving it like a wide net, but what she found, in her research was that incomplete things are remembered about twice as well as complete things. In her experiments, it was on people who either did or did not complete a task, and does that stay with you in your memory? But the application of this goes a lot wider. I mean, it's fair to cast a wide net because in the intervening century, there are other researchers who have contributed to this, have expanded on it. Maria, whatever her last name is, Maria something, she's probably the most famous one. But in all these expansions, what we've learned is there's an emotional tension that creates an urgency to return. It's the incomplete puzzle that refuses to be forgotten. And in literature, what this means is the loose plot threads, those ones have a longer lifespan than the neatly tied ones. And all the great writers know, I mean, going back to like Plato, the most effective stories don't answer every single thing. What they do is transport you. Your emotions, your worldview, your sense of self. This all has to be somewhere else when the story ends. Who you were at the beginning when you opened that book, and who you became at the end. Those are totally different people. That is effective storytelling, and the Zeigarnik effect is part of that vehicle of transportation. I mean, it insists that you do some of the transport work yourself, as opposed to just being like a passive passenger through the narrative. And that's what makes it work. I think there's a similar effect in music. I don't know that it has a name. Maybe you know the name of it, but the phenomenon that the most overt and obvious lyrics, they leave no room for interpretation, as opposed to Bob Dylan, the John Lennons and Michael Stipes and Billy Corgans. I mean, the lyricists like this, there's enough clarity that they establish a theme, a mood, a sentiment, something like this. But there's also enough ambiguity. There's a wide enough hole that the listeners can sort of insert themselves into the narrative. Bad lyrics are just like bad novels, and they explain every single detail, and in doing so, they exclude listeners from feeling connection. I think in books, denying the reader just a couple of puzzle pieces is the most effective way to do it. Give them enough of a picture that they can solve the image themselves, but let them do some of the work. I think Patrick Rothfuss probably came the closest to mastery here. I would even say like video games are sort of peripherally related to this phenomenon, where the better the graphics, the clearer the characters and the setting, the environments, the less personal it feels. At least this is true to me. It just subtracts from imagination. It starts to feel shallower. It's what we don't express that really captures people's attention. We're all drawn to secrets, to the undisclosed, to the unsolved mysteries. Just look at how many conspiracy theories emerge anytime the tiniest detail is withheld. What people say openly, nobody cares about. It's what they try to conceal, that people try to pry out of them. Those are the mysteries that we all need to unravel and reveal. But that's starting to get into a slightly different topic, so I'm going to save that for next time. In the meantime, I hope if it's something, scientific or medical or whatever, that you don't have to be your own detective, that you don't have to do your own labor there, that every puzzle piece is provided for you. But for everything else in the arts, whether it's lyrics, whether it's a book, I hope it's ambiguous enough that you can insert yourself into that narrative and you can solve some of those mysteries for yourself. All right, I'll see you next time.